The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors: Woodland Stud, Brecon Farms, New Zealand Bloodstock Standardbred, Stonewall Stud, the clubs Alexandra Park, Cambridge, Addington and Ashburton, Garrard's Horse and Hound, and IRT. It's your horse and our passion. Hi everyone, welcome into another edition of Your Box Seat, and a big thank you to our stable of sponsors, of course, getting in behind this show. Michael Guerin joins us off the back of a pretty whirlwind Cup Carnival, the chance for us to review that last week, Michael, and a bit of a lull in proceedings in terms of harness racing this week.
It was a lull here, Greg. What wasn't a lull was the New Zealand flag fluttering above the Meadowlands for TVG night. That's sort of the Harness Jewels season ending night over the weekend, and our man Dexter Dunn won 4 major races, and Greg, he's now firmly ensconced. He's the number one dog. He is the leading money driver in North America. Quite remarkable, Greg, and probably rivals for those who don't watch a lot of harness racing, what James is doing, James McDonald, in Sydney. So for me, it's been one of those stories we haven't got our teeth into as much as we would like to this year because we've had so many other things going on. We've had our own open class racing. It worked out beautifully that he cemented that spot, Gregory, when we did have that week where we all caught our breath in New Zealand harness racing.
Yeah, and of course he got the Racing Riders Driver of the Year last year, as well and truly on track to grab his second title there. Michael Guerin had the opportunity to catch up with Dexter and talk all things in life stateside.
Well, joining us now on the box seat, all the way from America, I think he's on the way to the golf course, is Dexter Dunn. A rare day off for you, buddy.
It is, Mick. Yeah, how we doing? It's a busy season, sort of nearly over now, so starting to quiet down a little bit, and good chance to get in the golf course and play some bad golf.
Mate, TVG night at the Meadowlands on the weekend. You picked up 4. For people watching in New Zealand, would that sort of be like winning 4 on Jules Day? Would that be the best way to describe it?
Yeah, I guess so. It's one of the bigger days over here. It's the end of the season. We had the Breeders' Crown 3 weeks ago now, and then TVG night's the last big night. They have 4 TVG events, and then we have 4 stakes races for the 2-year-olds as well. So it's a pretty big night.
Okay, so when you say it's the last big night of the season, so maybe a little bit like the Jewels, what happens now? Like, do you drive less over the next 2 months or something like that? Do you actually take a break? Does harness racing, where you drive, predominantly take a break?
Yeah, we still race every week. You can race 6 days a week if you want to. I think Chester's running through to the end of December, so that's probably you could still do 7 days a week if you wanted to, and then once they close, you can do 6 days, but I usually do 4 days a week over the winter. So it's plenty enough time to be out in the cold over here during those months. So yeah, it's a good quieter time, especially after summer's so busy over here that you're sort of going every day. It's good to, still be busy enough, but get a little bit of downtime as well.
When you say going every day, mate, do you mean you're actually driving at the races every day, or are some days just the trials? Because I know some days you do tour-a-days, don't you?
Yeah, it basically is every day. I mean, you might get the odd day off here and there, or just have to do trials one of the days. So, but generally, it's pretty much every day, and a lot of travelling with it as well. So, it's good. I really enjoyed it. It was busy and hectic, but I can't complain about the summer. It was enjoyable for me anyway.
Talk to me about the weekend. Some proper horses like Manchengo, obviously Better's Wishes off to stud now. When you're driving, first of all, are you surprised how many of these good horses you've managed to get on in, mainly the first year, but now it's your second year? Like you had a lot of these last year as well. Has it been surprising how quickly you've got to the top of the heap?
Oh, yeah, I'm just as surprised as anybody else probably, Mick. It's, I didn't expect that to happen at all. I was hoping to do good, but you never expect what's happened. And like you said, the horses I've got to drive has been pretty unbelievable last year and this year. So, a couple of my better ones went out. They had their last start on the weekend with Manchego and Better's Wish, and you could say it's sad, but it was also sort of more to look at it. I was lucky to be involved with them at all. So, it was good for them to go out on winning notes.
I presume driving a horse like Bettor's Wish is not totally different from some of the best paces you've driven in New Zealand. Like, for example, Chris and Me is a horse who, would have been probably close to that grade. Manchego is probably different, though, because we don't have trotters like that down here. How different has she been to drive to, say, the trotters you were driving in New Zealand?
She's definitely, I think the trotters on a whole, Mick, over here are definitely better. And there's a lot more of them. There's the breeds, pretty enhanced, and the trotters over here are, they're pretty good. So, yeah, driving a horse like Manchego, I definitely hadn't driven a trotter like her before back in New Zealand, although I drove some nice ones. But she was just amazing. She was like driving a pacer, really. Her speed, her gait was amazing. And obviously, she had a great career from when she was a 2-year-old through to this year. So, it's definitely a pleasure sitting behind a great trotter like that. Along with Amigo Vola this year, he made 900,000 and had a great year as well.
Do you get as attached to the horses over there as you did like a Chris and Me back home? Because obviously with Chris and Me, you were working at Crans in the morning, so you would drive him sometimes when he was in the country, and you probably saw a lot more of him, I presume, than some of the horses you're driving over there, because I would guess, Dex, you probably don't drive them in track work in the morning there. For example, some of those horses at Nancy Tactors, I doubt you're going to Nancy Tactors in the morning.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you just see them on race day, Mick, or, trials days. But, a horse like Bit of a Legend, I spent quite a lot of time at Chris Ryder's barn, especially through the winter months and, during when we had the lockdown over here during the break. So, a horse like Bettor's Wish I got extremely attached to, and he was so good to me. And, he was a lot like a Smiling Shard or Chris and Me to me back home. He's, he had so much character about him and did such a great job on the racetrack. So, yeah, a horse like him I got attached to. It was a massive thrill for him to go out a winner. His last career start, I think he deserved to. He'd put in some great miles over the last 2 years here. So, it's sad to see them go, but yeah, also looking forward to the offspring.
What's the biggest difference, Dex, from rolling onto the track? And I'm not talking about driving at the rural tracks in New Zealand, but when you rock onto Addington on a Friday night and you're up against some pretty good horse people, what's the biggest difference to what you do there or here, back home in New Zealand, to what you would do in a normal race at the Meadowlands?
There's not too much difference. You get to the racetrack, you get prepared for the races, and you study your races and do your form and go out and do your best, really, Mick. Obviously, it's a little different in the way that things run on a race night, but really, I think it doesn't matter where you are. Once you get on the racetrack, you've got to be prepared and do your best out on the track.
Mate, these days, obviously, you're based in Pennsylvania. How much of your mind, because I had this experience when I moved away from home, from the South Island to the North Island, how much of your mind is still back in New Zealand from time to time? Like just 2 weeks ago, we saw your brother and your father win the Dominion with Sunday's Sun. Is that something you would wake up in the morning and check your phone for straight away? Or is it so all-encompassing what's happening in North America that it's very much an afterthought, New Zealand?
No, it's definitely not an afterthought, Mick. I've actually got a lot of family and a lot of friends back in New Zealand still racing, so I keep a close eye on it. I watched all of Cup Day and all of Show Day, so I really enjoyed that. And, results-wise, I'll check up on results, once a week or something and see how everyone's been doing. So, no, it's definitely not an afterthought. It's, like I said, I got lots of family and friends still doing it back home, so, it's good to keep an eye on them.
Is that the one day of the year where you think to yourself, I mean, obviously family aside and your daughter aside, obviously, but that's more important. But is when you're watching Cup Day, the one day of the year, you think, I wouldn't mind being back home for that?
Oh, definitely, Mick. It's probably the one day of racing a year I miss now that I live over here in Jersey. But I grew up in Christchurch. New Zealand Cup Day is an iconic day. It's it's pretty special to the town and to harness racing people. So definitely miss Cup Day. I miss Cup Week. It's such a great week. It's one of the best weeks in racing, harness racing around the world. So yeah, I miss it. I miss not being there for that day and having a good time.
Mate, you must be awfully proud of your dad. He's won the premiership, which is an awfully hard thing to do in New Zealand. And, of course, the way Johnny's driving and more or less co-training with your dad and seeing what they're achieving must make you very proud.
Absolutely, Mick, and they deserve it. I don't think anyone would deny them of that. They, work extremely hard to, make sure their horses are always 100% go on the track. So, they do a great job. Johnny does an outstanding job, and they definitely deserve it. It was really good to see.
Mate, when you first got there, I mean, you would walk, I presume, into the driver's room and you see Yannick Gingara and some of these guys, and you would think, wow. How quickly did you get used to that? And do you, in your mind, now think, well, I'm one of those guys, I'm one of the John Campbells of the new era?
I think I've been lucky enough to drive been put on by good enough horses that we've sort of raced with those guys in all the major stakes races this year. So, I've been really lucky with all the horses. Good horses I've raced Mick this year. And, like when I first got here, I was just trying not to muck up or mess up or get anyone's way or stuff like that. So, it's taken a bit of a turn, but it's like I said, I've just really been lucky to sit behind some amazing horses over the last 2 years and, lead me around the country racing all the big races, which is, it's been exciting.
Dex, if I said to you, because this is the way most people would view this, you've won over $10 million in stakes again, you're going to win the premiership for stakes this year. If I said to you, you're the leading driver in North America, Dexter Dunn, North America's leading harness racing driver, how does that sound?
It doesn't really sink in, to be honest, Mick. It's, it's probably a dream of mine. It's, not that really. I never really dreamed of that, but I just dreamed to drive over here from when I was a young kid. So, it's pretty crazy. It's been a crazy year, but it's, like I said, Mick, I drove some, great trainers and I drove some great horses. It's, I've really been lucky.
Mate, off the track, obviously we hear all these horror stories in New Zealand about COVID in North America, because at the moment we don't have a lot of changes to our life because of it. How does it impact your life on a daily basis? For example, going to the races, what do you have to do differently than you would have to do here?
Obviously we're masked up everywhere we go over here. If you go anywhere inside, you've got to have a mask. Go on the racetrack, you've got to have a mask up at all times, unless we're on the racetrack. So, it's definitely changed. Since we come back racing, it's definitely been a little different. But I think, the harness racing or the tracks themselves and the community have done a great job of, taking all the precautions and doing the right thing so we can keep racing on a daily basis. So, it's definitely been different, but we've been racing, Mick, and that's the main thing. So, we got through all our stakes races this year without a hiccup once we started back, and that's, it's really been lucky we could do that. So, yeah, it's different. I think everyone's got used to it now, the setup and the rules and regulations of it all. But you want to race, we've got to do it, and we're more than happy to do it if we can keep racing. So, yeah, it's just changed what we've got used to.
Mate, in America, you're coming out the back end of an election, which I don't think many people in New Zealand realise how serious elections there are. I was at Jimmy Tacker's a couple of years ago, and I made a joke about Donald Trump, and it did not go down well at all. Was it a surprise for you how seriously people over there take the Democrats-Republican thing? Because, like me, I suppose you're a bystander to it, but man, over there it's pretty serious stuff.
Oh, it's extremely serious. Yeah, no, it's people are so adamant on their side or the other way, and people get in arguments over it too. So, it's a very serious thing. It's they wear their party on their sleeve. Yeah, I'm on the fence really.
Good idea.
I don't get involved in it too much, So, but yeah, it is. It's a big deal over here.
Mate, everybody back in New Zealand is so proud of you, mate. But a lot of people are thinking, well, hey, is Dexter going to come home? And I know you haven't got a crystal ball, but I presume the way things are going, the US is home now for a while, for the foreseeable future.
It is definitely, Mick. Yep. No, I have no plans on coming home to race horses anyway. So, I'd like to continue my career going over here. It's it's a great country. It's a great place to race horses, and it's been a new chapter in my life, but it's been an enjoyable one and one I want to keep going.
How difficult is that with your daughter, who's obviously back in New Zealand? I know you haven't seen her since March, and I presume there's a lot of FaceTiming and that sort of stuff, because the way the world is, she can't just pop across and see you. So that must be one of the hard parts of being away from your home country.
It definitely is hard, Mick. I miss her miss her a lot, and obviously a lot of FaceTime every day with her. So I think hoping that once things settle down and come back a little bit to normal, we can work something out, because it's like to spend more time with her, and hoping that happens soon.
Well, maybe her mum's got a show of this, so you can sort of say hello. We can post a say hello there. You can tell her that you're talking on television, because it's going to be on TV tonight in New Zealand, I think.
Yeah, right. So try to get her to watch. It might be the hard part, but she'll find something else to watch.
What's the thing you miss most, apart from your daughter, obviously, and your family, who are such a big part of harness racing? What's the thing you miss most about New Zealand? Is there anything that you can't, like, is it the All Blacks? Is it going to the pub with your mates, or playing touch rugby? All the simple things which are probably a lot easier to do in Christchurch than they are in New Jersey?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely miss, obviously, family and friends. Like a week like Cup Week, you miss those kind of weeks, because it's such a good week, and we get to Galloping Cup Day and you see everybody that you know, and it's a great catch up and stuff like that. So I definitely miss that kind of thing. Those things on the rugby side of it. There's a lot of old Kiwis over here that don't miss a beat. They know nearly more about rugby than me and you, Mick, I think. So I see them at the races. We always have a good rugby talk every week, and stuff like that. So I've still been keeping that side of things going, and that's been good.
Mate, you trialled the beard over winter. I thought it was okay. It wasn't a disaster, but I think you're better the way you are now, bro.
Yeah, that was a lockdown beard. That was an ungroomed, untamed beard, that one. So, that won't be come back anytime soon, I don't think, Mick.
Well, that was a wonderful insight from Dexter Dunn. Yes, 10-time premiership champion here, Michael, and good to understand a little bit more about what life's like for him, what it's been like in the last 6 to 8 months, with life being so different for everyone around the world.
Yeah, actually, Greg, I cut the end of the interview off by about 20 seconds, so Dexter did say big hi to everybody in New Zealand, all his family and friends. Hell of a thing he's achieved. As I said, it does rival what James is doing in Sydney with being the top of a very, very hard school, let alone to do it in 2 years, and let alone to do it with the fact that when he arrived there, he was starting from zero, Greg. The people like Jimmy Tactor, which has now become the Nancy Tactor stable, they would have heard of him, they might have seen him, but they didn't know him. And now he's the #1 go-to guy for some of their best horses. So I'm tremendously proud of him. I know everybody watching this show is. He's still pretty much Dex, Greg. He's still very laconic and very laid back about things. I'm glad he shaved the beard. It looked ridiculous, but we've all been there before. So what you take out of that, Greg, is yes, he misses his daughter, which is understandable, and that's the sacrifice you make at this level. But I don't see him coming home anytime soon, Greg, and I definitely don't see him coming home anytime soon to drive racehorses. And look, that's a shame for our industry, Greg. But as we learnt last week from your exclusive interview with Mark and Natalie, life moves on.
Yeah, it does, Michael. When you consider the changing landscape for the training and driving here in New Zealand, we hear this week that Nathan Purden's now going to be setting up in Melbourne post the Miracle Mile Carnival, where he'll be helping out his father with his team there, and then carry on with his own team in Melbourne. And when you think about Paul Court going, obviously Crandall Getty not in the training ranks now, Mark and Natalie, and not too in the too distant future, Michael, the likes of Maurice McKendry, Ricky May, Tony Herlihy, Barry Purden. They've still got a few years ahead of them, but they're closer to the end of their careers. Jim Curtin's another one, Colin DeFilippi. Things are changing quite a bit, aren't they, in the landscape around the horse people and who's going to be the future of the game?
They are, and the remarkable thing is when you think of all those names, and some of those drivers will still be around for 10 years, but 10 would be a stretch. You sort of think, well, hold on, what's going to happen to harness racing? But they're still going to run the races, Greg. As we've seen, we're not getting that many tracks closed under the new rationalisation of tracks. So racing will still go ahead. Alexandra Park's dire financial position is starting to become better because they've made some land deals and will continue to make more. So racing's going to continue, Greg. And there's a huge gap there now for somebody or some group of people, young trainers and drivers, to say, okay, well, I'm interested in this, I want this. Now, the one thing they're all going to need, Greg, is land. You need somewhere to train. And that's why I think it's important we have a training centre south of Auckland, whether that's at Pukekohe in the future or whether that's somewhere else. But once you've got that, Greg, people are still going to buy horses. And even if those horses are cheaper, they're still going to buy them. So with all those races still to be run, the people like the Regan Todds and the Gavin Smiths and the Josh Dickies and Zach Butcher, if he goes out on his own, you see a guy like Andre Potama coming through. There's a lot more down your way, people I don't even know, Greg, or I know their names but don't know them very well. There's a gap there for somebody, Greg, and life does change. So it's not an easy thing to do, but Nathan Williamson's a perfect example of another guy, Brad Williamson. There's people there, Greg, who have the ability of these guys who are moving on, and they're just going to need the experience and the backing to take care of it. But I think we're seeing a change. I think a really interesting thing, Greg, which came out of last week's discussion with Mark and Nat, and it's not by any means a massive change, but if I bought a $100,000 yearling last February, I would want it to go to Mark or Nat, which means that horse would go to the South Island. That would be a South Island horse. And when Mark moved to the South Island, Greg, that enormously changed the dynamic of postcodes. South Island became stronger racing than North Island racing. If Mark Purdon and then Natalie Rasmussen, Greg, had trained in South Auckland, North Island racing at the top level would have been stronger than South Island racing. And I'm not saying they're going to disappear, and Hayden Cullen will do a super job, I'm sure, at the All-Stars property. But now if you buy a $100,000 yearling, or half those purchased for $100,000, Greg, they don't automatically go south anymore. And some of those horses will go to Tony Herlihy or Barry Purdon or Josh Dickey or other people here in the north, Kyle Marshall. So, Greg, I think that's an interesting dynamic of this change, which might see a redress in this balance, because for so long now on the North Island, Greg, we've been second-class, open-class citizens, probably since the Jeff Small days, apart from Barry Purdon and Ray Green in recent times. So I think it's interesting, Greg. I think that little dynamic shift there may be something which people are still catching up to mentally.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully catch up with Nathan Purdon for next week's show to have a chat about his plans going forward. Time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at a guy who's just achieved a pretty big milestone and then get into the domestic racing. Welcome back into your box seat, of course brought to you by our stable of sponsors, PC Ferguson. He's been driving at the top of our harness racing level for quite some time, and last Saturday he joined a rather elite group,
Monkey held together.
Only 8 now in the club. $1 Million Monkey was the winner, and win number 2,000 for Peter Ferguson.
But it is $1 Million Monkey, and Fergie's about to join the 2,000 club, and just the 8th ever to do so, and he gets the salute as well. Well done, Fergie. PC Ferguson, 2,000 wins, $1 Million Monkey did it easily.
And reading during the week, Michael, that he had a chance to reflect a little bit, because $1 Million Monkey was going to win and win comfortably. And of course, plenty of congratulations for the man they call Ferg, driving for Regan Todd, who just recently got $1 Million Monkey. But when you think about Peter Ferguson, you instantly think about Auckland Cups with Kate's First and Mimu Chao and so many big race winners. He drove for the likes of Doug Gale, and of course, earlier on in his career, he got opportunities around the country. He drove a lot in the south, and a number of stables supported him there, and he was quick to reflect on some of those that have given him the opportunity to get to this wonderful number.
It's a big number when you consider Peter hasn't really driven a lot for the massive barns of his era. Obviously, he hasn't driven a lot for Mark and Natalie. Probably hasn't driven all that much for Crandell Good. He's driven a bit for him, but he hasn't driven a lot for him. Barry Purdon, he hasn't driven a lot for Barry. So they're the barns that have dominated during that era. He didn't even drive enormously for Jeff Small when Jeff was having a huge run about 10 years ago. So he's had to drive the hard way, Greg, and he's driven a lot of average horses down at Manawatu and Taranaki and Hara and all those places. So he's been very aggressive as a driver, and he's put a lot of horses who weren't that good, Greg, in positions to win races. And that's one skill. Then you have the other skill of coming to Alexandra Park and Addington and driving better horses against those bigger stables and doing the job. So congratulations to him. Obviously Wendy's been a huge part of that, because you can't achieve these sort of things without a supportive person in your life. And he's also produced for us Dylan, who's obviously an outstanding young horseman. And Greg has trained, I think, the Auckland Cup winner for greyhounds this year. Is it Auckland Cup or one of the big ones?
Yep,
so
that's correct.
Hell of a thing to achieve, hell of a body of work from Fergie. So, yeah, congratulations to him and to the whole Ferguson family. I know they'll all be enormously proud, as they should be, Greg.
And it sort of all started for him with the Ken Webber trained Sitamod Jr. Michael, I remember him winning the TVNZ Mile, and Fergie was a pretty young man there. And like I said, he was quick to reflect on people like the Webber stable, Murray Brown down south when he used to travel down there and drive all the time. So, yeah, all we can do is congratulate Fergie, and I'm sure it's not his last winner. Domestic race. And
also, Greg, he was also responsible for bringing back the porn moustache, which probably was, at one stage in harness racing, was very much on the outer, and Fergie brought that back. And there's been a bit of facial hair, as we heard from Dexter Dunn, in the last couple of years. I think Fergie can be the pioneer of that.
Yeah, we'll give him that title anyway. Let's get into the domestic wrap from last weekend in Alexandra Park on Friday night. South Coast Arden. There was a chance he could have come down for the IRT New Zealand Cup, but Mango decided that Auckland was the better way to go, and he didn't get there by much, Michael, but he came off the back mark and he proved he is a very talented pacer.
Kelly's Delights run to fourth. South Coast Arden, Dina Brown, Mimi Coco back on the inside. South Coast Arden, Dina Brown, these two, they're locked in a great battle here. South Coast Arden will hold on. South Coast Arden, boy, that's been a good tough win too. Dina Brown second, Mimi Coco third.
Yeah, strong performance. What we didn't see there, of course, was the fact that he had to work a little bit early on to get the lead, and you don't need to beat Cup horses to be a Cup horse. Greg, I'm pretty sure he'll turn up in the Auckland Cup on New Year's Eve. He'll be needed, because I spoke to John Dunn at length yesterday. They are not sending their open class pacing team north. So no Classy Brigade and no Henry Hubert. Now, I think this horse isn't too far behind a Henry Hubert type horse. I'm not going to insult Classy Brigade by saying this horse is there yet, because Classy Brigade's run a place in the New Zealand Cup, Greg. But I think he's the sort of horses we need coming into open class, and particularly for Franklin Cups and those races where some of the best horses might be off back marks, Greg. I think he's got a real role to play, and I think half a season in open grade, getting knocked around and doing some hard stuff, will put him really nicely placed to be a New Zealand Cup horse this time next year.
Let's have a look at that Trillion Trust Auckland Cup market, and of course it's headed up by the All-Stars team, and Self Assured, the Cup winner at 290, 320 about Copy That, who again back on his home territory. He'll have a part to play, I'm sure. Spank him at 350, and Ultimate Sniper, I suppose, is the big query horse. We're yet to see him publicly, Michael, but looking forward to that. And if his ability at Alexandra Park 12 months ago is reflected in this year's Auckland Cup Carnival, then $7.50 is pretty interesting for Mike.
Yeah, I've rated him a 0, Greg, in my betting percentages for the race, which, to be honest, the top three do dominate. We all realise that, but he's going to need to start racing, and he's quite a robust type of a horse. I can't see him racing himself into form in time for an Auckland Cup. I'm not saying it's impossible. He's an All-Stars horse. Weird things happen with their horses, but yeah, I'll believe it when I see it, Greg. It's going to come around awfully quickly, the Auckland Cup. It's only about 5 weeks away, so I would only see 2 racing opportunities for him before then. Is that enough to beat Self Assured? I doubt that very much.
Let's move on to the featured trot there from the park last Friday night, and it was a Quinella for the Josh Dickey team, and Sartorius was a winner the previous week. Tricky Rick had the advantage of a start off Sartorius and getting to the markers first, Michael, but Sartorius in the hands of Zach Butcher was just a little bit too strong.
Yeah, look, he was very good, wasn't he, Greg? He's such a good staying horse, and I think Tricky Rick might have been half a run short, but probably no excuses, really. He was just really good, Sartorius. He's a big lump of a horse, and he'll be a Rowe Cup horse, maybe a national trot horse along the way. Tricky for horses like him, Greg, because they can win a bunch of these type of races over the course of their careers, but I'm not sure he can step into the next Group 1 level grade, but then again, a lot of horses probably can't. So, big week for Josh Dickey. Obviously, he's taken over as the trainer of Winterfell, Greg, and Winterfell won't be heading to the national trot to defend that title. He's heading to the paddock, so a pretty exciting time in his career. I think Josh is well placed, or better placed than many of those people, Greg, because he has a really good property and he's based in Auckland and he's a young, aggressive, ambitious type of a guy with a good partner behind him. I think, Greg, he's a person who may be able to get some of these horses. Now, he's not getting Winterfell because of the mark and that situation change. He's getting Winterfell because the horse is better right-handed. But I think he's going to become, Gregory, one of the go-to trainers for Southerners, at least, who want to send a horse north.
Yeah, that beautiful property at Rosslands there, I'm sure you're right. He attracts them with his ability, but also the facilities that he has there. National trot-wise, Michael, we had a look at the market last week. It looks a two-horse race. Of course, they'll go through the Lyle Creek. $2.10 about Bolt for Brilliance with the home ground advantage, but we all saw, Michael, what Sunday Sun was able to achieve in the Dominion. This is going to be one heck of a battle.
Yeah, it is. Now, I spoke to John yesterday, so he is going to the Lyle Creek. Sunday Sun going to the Lyle Creek. They're happy with him. He'll go Lyle Creek, then Cambridge on Christmas Eve, then the National Trot. So he has 2 runs heading to the National Trot. Also spoke to Tony Hurley last night. Bolt for Brilliance. Had 2 weeks in the paddock. Put on a bit of weight. They were really happy with him. He actually wasn't too tired after those 3 very hard runs. He had 3 national level type runs back to back to back. So Tony said not going to the Lyle Creek, so no Lyle Creek, which means Sunday Sun's going to be awfully short there. He'll head to the Cambridge Flying Mile on Christmas Eve, so that's the first time these 2 horses will meet at Cambridge, Christmas Eve, and then he heads to the National Trot. Left-handed Greg, Bolt for Brilliance has had 4 starts, only the one win in the Jewels. 2 unplaced runs, actually ran second in a 2-year-old race at Cambridge when Phil Williamson drove him. So Tony drove Cheeky Babe on that occasion. So that's the big clash, Greg. Real bonus for Cambridge. Well done to David Branch and his team there. They're getting 2 huge guns on a day a lot of people have off, Greg. It's a meeting where a lot of people have started their holidays. That's a bit of an early Christmas treat for us all, Gregory. How do you see it? Let's forget Cambridge because maybe Sunday Sun's going to be fitter. National Trot, home track for Bolt for Brilliance, put him in barriers 4 and 5. Who do you want to be on?
Well, the one thing you do know for sure, and now we've got the Dominion to reflect on, is John Dunn will launch Sunday Sun. He'll want to try and outstay Bolt for Brilliance and give him plenty to think about from a long way out. Now, you still, in the back of your mind, Michael, have Sunday Sun with a couple of frailties, but many of those got lost, surely, with that performance in the Dominion because he was faultless and just kept running in 4 minutes over the 2 miles. So, yeah, his confidence levels are at an all-time high, as are Bolt for Brilliance's. I'm with Sunday Sun, but, yeah, I'm in love with Bolt for Brilliance. So I better stick south versus north and go head-to-head with you.
It's a little bit, I'm a Sunday Sun too. I'm a Sunday at this stage. It's a little bit like the self-assured copy that thing going into the New Zealand Cup. One looks absolutely outstanding with freakish times. The other one's more proven and open class. And Sunday Sun's even more proven than self-assured was heading into the New Zealand Cup, Greg. So I'll go self-assured, but I wouldn't be stunned if they come out and trot 3:19, Greg, and we all just go, what happened there? And Bolt for Brilliance maybe outstays him because he's that good, but I don't know. The version that turned up on Dominion Day of Sunday Sun, awfully hard to bet against that.
Yeah, and of course he's already won the 2 Group 1s at Alexandra Park, the Anzac Cup and the Rowe Cup. We need to have a look at the Fillies series. It was only a small field there in the first race last Friday night, but Better Twist was in front in the hands of Brent Mangos. It was a good finish, Michael. There wasn't much between the lot of them, and they rated pretty fast time, 2-4 for the 1700, but he gets home, or she does, and she cements favouritism for the final.
Yeah, and big night for Brent Mangos. He obviously catch drove Better Twist. I think she's such a good stayer, Greg. She looked a little bit flat out there over the 1700. I'm not sure if a sprint up the straight probably suited her that well, but she got the job done, and I think they all got a bit flat-footed. Darling Me looked a bit flat-footed in behind them and then sort of started to roll into it later, so didn't change the pecking order much, Greg. I thought the most surprising thing out of that was how good the 3rd and 4th horses were. So she's the best of our fillies, but I still think she's not unbeatable, Greg. I still think there's a lot of chapters to be written in the book of the 3-year-old fillies for this season.
Yeah, there is, and I spoke to Mark Jones about Braveview Kelly, who will go around in the heat, which we'll preview very shortly. And yes, she's definitely going, and La Rosa's going as well. Whereas last week he was thinking maybe not, but because of the smaller numbers and only 4 going around in that heat, he thinks it's definitely worth a shot. Here's a look at the market. So we have the favourite at this stage, Better Twist, just ahead of Darling Me, and then Braveview Kelly, who I'm sure will give you a great sight. And I did put it to Mark, what's she like right-handed? He said no problems there. So that's a look back at Alexandra Park from last Friday night. Chance for us to look forward now. And Addington Raceway has 2 meetings this week. Of course, we're getting into the Christmas racing theme. And Friday night at Addington, they have the 8 races. The first one I wanted to have a look at, Michael, was race number 2. A lot of form coming out of Cup Week, and Idle Stewartia is the first one that I was hoping to have a look at, and here is the performance from Idle Stewartia. In form, Roger Austin stable in front here. Did get run down, Michael, by a Dream of Jeannie, who's very, very fast, but she'd only need to reproduce this, the mare by Superfast Stewart, to go very close in race number 2.
Yeah, it's a big help if you can step and run, particularly in this grade, Greg, because a lot of these trotters aren't going to be running past everything in that often. Where you land is often where they finish. So, yep, she's a horse who I'm always happy to back in this type of grade. It's funny, we talk about Cup Week form, Gregory, and how we just expect horses to turn up out of Cup Week and keep on winning, but we saw a few last week at Banks Peninsula who were good at Cup Day and poor on the grass. So sometimes I think we just think because they race during the Cup Carnival, not saying Idle Stewartia is one of these horses, you think they'll just rock up and win their next start. It doesn't turn out that way.
No, absolutely it does not. Spoke about those fillies before. Braveview Kelly takes her place in the heat of the sires, and this was her winning at Ashburton. Now, Michael, she had no right to win this. She runs down La Rosa, who gets to the lead and holds pretty strongly against the All-Stars pair. That's Braveview Kelly looking to find a gap. Have a look at her last 100 metres here, Michael. She absolutely flies, and they got home at 27.6.
Braveview Kelly flashed home and beat La Rosa.
I'm not sure that Better Twist, although Better Twist wouldn't be suited by that type of run, or Darling Me would have finished any quicker, Greg. 27.6 isn't particularly quick over 400 metres at Ashburton, but her last 100 metres, as you mentioned, awfully fast. So I think she's got the speed to run with, if not run past, the All-Stars big guns. I think we'll find out a bit more about her this week, Greg. But yeah, that was. Sometimes you just see a horse sprint and you think, okay, this is a proper horse, and clearly she is.
Yeah, she is. She has the outside gate to work with, but I think she'll be pretty tough in that one. Spellbound comes out of a very good Cup week for her. She was excellent in the Mares Classic on show day. Yes, she got the run behind Beyond Words, but she was very good, and she was good in the Neville R final behind Amazing Dream too, Michael. I think she'll get her chance this week from the middle of the line over the 2600.
Well, she has the gate speed to go forward if she wants to, Greg, and I think we're going to see a lot of this, which is the horses who finish second, third, fourth in those biggest races. Once you take the winners out of them, Greg, that's when they really do start to fall into races they should win, because we've seen over the years with sire stakes and all those types of races, racing in the best races, take the winners out, you drop back in the grade and you tend to win. So I thought this was her chance this week. She won't come north. Need You Now, her stablemate, is in the north, so she'll be ready to take on Amazing Dream of Bella Montana on the 11th at Alexandra Park. But yeah, as mentioned earlier with the Dunn horses, a smaller team for them heading north this year, so Spellbound will be sticking around down home. Just going back to Classy Brigade and Henry Hubert, they'll probably go Green Mile, and then there's a free-for-all at Addington, and then maybe down to Omakau, Ashburton Cup, 50-50.
Yeah, there's plenty of decisions to be made by stables with those types of horses, and a big bonus for some of those clubs further south with them not heading north. Speaking of north, 8-race card there, Alexandra Park on Friday night. I was actually lucky enough to be there last week, Michael, and was quite taken by a piece of Lou. Gee, I was impressed, of course, a winner of a sire stakes heat, and was pretty brave here. I reckon it can go pretty close in race number 2 on Friday.
Yeah, I agree. It's a horse I followed a bit. I think he's a bit immature still, but he beat Luke John when he won that sire stakes. Luke John's a proper horse, as we saw also at Alexandra Park. I'm just on that, Greg. It's the first time you've been at Alexandra Park, I'm sure, in a more social capacity. You got a chance to Go to the Lone Star, which is underneath the new apartments at Alexandra Park, and people just starting to move in there, Greg. What did you make of the vibe, the different vibe, because when you're working, you tend to stay in the same place, and what's happening at Alexandra Park and what you could sort of feel about what's going to happen there in the future?
Yeah, well, it was quite a Christmassy vibe. They had a lot of functions in the Lone Star, and it was like being at the races but not being at the races. We were in a room there with a dozen other people, you know, enjoying the race meeting, opened up the door, wandered out, had a look at the 2200 metre start, came back inside and enjoyed a meal and all that sort of stuff, you know. Look, it was a different feel, and when you do work at so many race meetings, it was something different, but something I really enjoyed. And then we wandered down to the track and through the stables, and like I say, it was completely different to what I'm used to, but enjoyable just the same. And I think the whole apartment set up there and the restaurants and all that sort of thing, it's only going to prosper, and I believe is the future of racing here in New Zealand. I can see that development, maybe not to that extent, happening around a few racetracks, because land is getting more and more difficult to find, isn't it?
Particularly bang in the middle of Auckland, yeah. So, look, it didn't work out the way they wanted financially for the ATC. They rolled the dice and it didn't work. And I think everybody now realises they should have joint ventured that thing, but it's easy to say. Looking backwards, had it worked, they would have had tens of millions of dollars in the bank. But once it's all done, once they take the machinery away and they get the dirt off the roads and it's actually finished, it's going to be amazing, Greg. It really is. There's going to be 3 fantastic towers there, probably a few more to be built, maybe by another developer. And a lot of the land on our racetracks is just wasted. It just sits there and it's dormant. It actually creates quite a nice vibe. I went to see you and the family last week at that Lone Star, and it's class. It's got a nice feel to it, Greg. So forgetting the numbers, long term, it's going to mean there's a lot of people at Alexandra Park all the time, some people living there, Greg, and I think that makes the track part of the community, which maybe some racetracks in the country aren't.
Yep, I totally agree there, Michael, and I can recommend the Lone Star. We had the lasso of hog, Michael. It was outstanding, I promise you that. Moving from there to Geraldine, Fresh Choice Geraldine Cup. It's always a really good race, and there's a number of horses coming out of the Cup Carnival, of course, and one of those is Steal the Show. I think he's an open class horse going forward. And on this performance in this field, Michael, Shandale getting to the inside, I think he'll go pretty close in the Cup. DiCaprio's in it. He won a great race in the Cup, of course, to finish in 5th position, has an exceptional grass track record. Nandolo comes out of the Cup and free-for-all as well. Gee, it'll be a cracking contest. 17,500 goes on the line there, and I like Steal the Show. I think he can absolutely be a force to be reckoned with once he gets to free-for-all company.
Yeah, I think those grass country cup races are one of the great things we have predominantly in the South Island, Greg, and you need to be pretty tough to win them. I thought William Wallace may be suited by Geraldine. It's been a front runner's track for a long time, Geraldine, because of course there's no banking on the grass tracks. But he was run over there fair and square, so I agree with you. Steal the Show, maybe top pick, but DiCaprio's got a good chance, and I thought William Wallace might just step and get that lead, Gregory, and be hard to run down, because it's one of those things we keep reminding people of as we get to grass track summer season. We keep thinking, because the tracks are big, that you can come from anywhere, Greg, but I haven't really found that to be the case.
No, and of course has been transferred to the Paul Kerr stable. We're respecting Mitchell's situation at the moment. I'm sure that story will evolve, but we'll be in the Paul Kerr colours for the Geraldine Cup this week. That is a preview of domestic racing, of course, throughout the land. We're about to take another break here on Your Box Seat with our stable of sponsors. When we come back, we'll wrap up and build towards the weekend of racing ahead. Welcome back into Your Box Seat. Sad time in harness racing, a name that's been associated with plenty of good horses. Lex and Heather Williams, of course. Heather losing her battle recently, and one of the best horses they had, Michael Guerin, was won over Kenny, of course, a 2-time Rowe Cup winner, multiple Group 1 winner, I think about 6 or 7, including one across the Tasman, and a horse that the Williams family will always be associated with, and what a mighty trotter she was.
Yeah, wonderful horse, and terribly sad to hear about Heather. She was a lovely lady and loved her horses, always on for a chat at the races. And yeah, Lex, we're all thinking of you and the rest of the family. Terrible time, Gregory. So, yep, it's always a sad moment when you think of anybody who enjoyed life that much, Gregory, coming to the end of their time.
Yeah, let's go and have a look at One Over Kenny and the ability that we saw so often, and in particular in the 2 mile feature at Alexandra Park. Have a look at this for a domination, Michael. We go back to the 1st of May 2009, but Springbank Richard getting to second there, of course. He won a Dominion and a couple of jewels, and well, One Over Kenny was at her absolute best. She drew the inside barrier. Some of us thought that might be a tricky spot to be, but that man sitting in the bike ensured that once in front, she was never going to get beaten, and she completely dominated. And there's Heather giving Tony a kiss, and Lex as well. They were just so in love with that mare and all of their horses, to be absolutely fair. And yeah, it's a pretty sad time, as we mentioned. We've got our winners and losers from last week from Matt Peden and the team at the tab. Let's have a look at where the money went, Michael. A few hits there. Couple at Alexandra Park, a decent play on South Coast Arden. He actually closed about $1.50 in the end. And the other one Matt mentioned to me was Copperhead Rose. A series of bets on that runner in the 8th at the Mott on Sunday meant it tumbled into about $6 odd from memory. May have even got shorter than that. And there's a few misses there too. And we managed to see that one with Tricky Rick, which hurt plenty of punters because it was $7 at one stage, Michael.
What about the bets on Majestic Hanover? C1 trotter in the old, 5,000 at 4.6. Now that's ballsy. And Alexis Rocket, 6,000 at 5.5, Greg. Now these aren't horses coming from big, huge stables where there's a bit of rah-rah about them. So, yeah, that's proper punting.
Yep, they're having a bit of a go at this time of year. Good luck to you, and a big thanks to Matt, of course, getting that information to us. What about around the nation? We have plenty of racing action for you once again, and I've already mentioned a couple of meetings at Addington, but Alexandra Park, the 8 races there starting Friday night, 6:26 will be the start time there for the first, and Addington alongside that, including that Dunstan Horsefeed Sire Stakes. Heat number 3 it is, 5:36 the start time there, all over just after 9 o'clock. Geraldine, their big one, Fresh Choice Geraldine Cup, 4:03 the start time of that one. The race meeting underway just after 12 o'clock. They've got the 11 races there, and Addington on Sunday they have 10, I think. 9, I think it is, 12:10 the start time anyway for the meeting there on Sunday. So plenty of reasons to get involved, Michael, and a lot of betting opportunities there for the punters all around the country.
One of the things I'm really happy about, Greg, and I was concerned it would happen a couple of years ago, is that the Geraldines are still going. I think it's absolutely crucial, and I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of people at very high levels in Australia, New Zealand, TAB, galloping people, harness people. And this rush to rationalise or centralise our tracks, I think it needs to be done better than it's being done. And there's been some really good consultation between people of both codes, but no one can convince me, Greg. Nobody who can convince me. I don't care what sort of abacus they've got, that one of the great strengths of New Zealand racing is not what we're going to see in the next 3 months, which is people going to predominantly grass track race meetings, sitting with their families, having a beer, having a ham sandwich, and having a cash bet. Putting $10 in on the rug and 10 people having a go and the family having a bet, Greg. Now, that might seem old-fashioned, and I know that the world's going digital and things are going to change. And yes, the sexy Karaka Millions are important, and Cup Day at Addington's important, Greg. But if we give this away, if we give away small track racing in this country for money, racing will be enormously poorer for it, Greg. So just seeing Geraldine's name there is a triumph for me, and I hope we're still, well, the show probably won't exist, Gregory, but I hope we're still talking about that stuff in 10 years' time. And anybody who doubts that only needs to hear one word, Kaikoura, to realise, Greg, what we're going to lose if we start centralising all our tracks.
Yep, have to concur there. Michael, just touch on the Breeders' Crown from last weekend, and it's the $50,000 Well, it's a bit of a Clayton's Australasian Trotting Championship this week as well, with the likes of Drop the Hammer and a couple of others there that will interest the punters, I think. Majestioso, I think, is in there as well.
Yep, the New Zealand bred Majestioso, who won the Victorian Derby last year, stepping into open class. Drop the Hammer is obviously the pacing breed New South Wales horse from Darren Hancock's team. He's heading south of the border to Victoria. From the New Zealand point of view, the Breeders' Crown was a disaster. We didn't send almost any horses there at all. We almost had no involvement. And the horse we sent who was going to win was Mexicana. Drew Barrier won in the 2-year-old Fillies trot. Unbelievably for it, the second the barrier went, jumped out of its gear, Greg. So part owned by Trevor Casey, I'm sure he might have felt like throwing something at the television. Just brutal to get that far into a campaign. Did win the Redwood while it's been over there. Really odd experience having the Breeders' Crown, Greg, with virtually no New Zealand horses in it, because it's something we've always been such a big part of, but that's 2020 for you, Greg. But I think it's a Breeders' Crown which is going to struggle to maintain the level of New Zealand interest, because it's going to be at this time of the year every year, Greg, because their season's gone from Jan 1 to December 31, and I think less and less people are likely to take New Zealand horses because it's smack bang between two Cup carnivals here, Greg. So where it sits heading forward for New Zealanders is going to be really interesting.
Was a little bit remiss last week too, Michael, of us not to mention the passing of Peter Hope, Bluey Hope, of course, father of Greer, grandfather of Ben, and he had a big part to play in this industry. Michael, we had a share in Rob Allen, who won the 74 Cup, of course, the only three-legged pacer to have won the Cup, and it was pretty sad to hear of his passing. A good friend of mine once told me the most important thing in life is to make your parents proud, and I'm sure that Bluey was extremely proud not only of his son and the achievements of their family, but also his grandson. And I know that Ben derived a lot of data and information off his grandfather, who was his biggest fan. And very sad to hear of his passing, but I'm sure he was extremely proud, particularly of what Greg and Nina have been able to achieve in recent times. They went from training sort of 10 winners a year right up to 50 winners and all of those great open class trotters and pacers.
Yeah, I went and saw Greg on and Nina on Dominion Day, not long after Bluey passed, and Greg said, look, Dad wanted to get to Cup Week. He got to Cup Week. He would have loved that. And he said, you know, he's a guy who had a great life and a very full life. I think he was 90 years old, Greg. So Greg was very proud of what his father had given him, the opportunities, which are now obviously percolating down to Ben as well.
Yep, they certainly are. On a different sphere, the celebration of a wedding was held during the week. Only in harness racing, Michael, would you have a wedding on a Tuesday, but I guess it's got to fit in somewhere. Maddie Williamson and Charlotte Purvis. Charlotte, I really don't know what you're thinking taking on Matthew, but I congratulate you both. And next week, with a bit of luck, we might have some photos from the Royal Harness Racing Wedding of the Year.
Maybe we can cut Maddie out of them. They might be slightly more appealing. Although you can probably say the same about my wedding photos, and I absolutely know we could say the same about yours back in the ginger copperhead days. So fair to say, there's not many people in harness racing get married, and the bloke helps the photos. No. But we might leave Maddie in. We'll see how we go. First of all, we need some photographs. We can get his little mate Hello Broadcast from Hong Kong to send in some photographs, because he's Maddie's biggest fan.
Yeah, he is.
Or maybe Charlotte is, I don't know.
Yeah, quite possibly. Hey, Michael, best bets of the week. Of course, we've been lucky enough to have Door Contracting come on board, and since they've been on board, we're batting at 100%. Got a couple home last week. What about this week for you?
That's the worst thing you can say, Greg.
Yeah, I know.
That's just the kiss of death. I'll tell you what I've done. Because I love the grass track so much and I want to support them, I've gone for Matuatana, which is possibly lunacy. But I think Matuatana gallops when he's under pressure, Greg. And I don't think he'll be under pressure at Geraldine. I think if he behaves himself, he's incredibly well rated here. I think he'll just come round, sit parked and win, if he behaves himself.
Yep, have to agree. On his best performances, he would go close to winning that. I've gone with Longview Lady. She comes out of that mare's race on show day, so I'm happy to be with her in race number 1. It's not as deep a race, and Blair Orange and Ken Barron do combine there. Michael, the upcoming shows for us, just wanted to confirm where the box seat's going to be throughout the month of December. We roll right through. I think the last show before Christmas is on the 23rd. Then we have the Trillion Trust Auction Auckland Cup preview on the 30th before we take a wee hiatus for basically the month of January. I think our next show back will be about the 27th of January, which will be very busy, Michael, because we'll start our build-up towards New Zealand Bloodstock sales, which are only 3 weeks after that, or less than that, and a whole lot of really good racing. The mares at Addington Raceway on the 12th of February, and then it'll build into the Derby at Auckland. So whilst we'll have a wee break there, there's a whole lot of racing going to happen. Some of those meetings at the likes of Cambridge that you mentioned will be well sought after. We'll be back about 4 weeks after that last meeting.
Yeah, I learned something last week, Greg, and I think it's important for harness racing people to think about. Most of them know because they're professional. I worked at the Ready to Run sales for the thoroughbreds last week for NZB, just doing interviews and stuff. But they had a really successful sale, and what happened there is there was nobody from overseas on the sale ground. And we are very realistically looking at the same situation for February, both at Karaka and in Christchurch. Now, I'm not saying that'll be the case. There's vaccines coming for COVID and lots of other different things that can happen. But we're looking at that potentially being the case, Greg, because it's still a 2-week quarantine to get into New Zealand, and no one's going to do that. So what I would say to the vendors out there now is, if you don't have a good camera, find someone who's got a good camera. The more video footage you can have of your horses, the more interviews of yourself talking about your horses, the more you can put your name out there, because we don't have the same level or amount of agents that they have in the galloping sales, Greg. That's crucial. It's crucial that they do that, and they just keep ramming that video down people's throats. And start now and say to people, get an email list. Send it to everybody in Australia, Greg. We don't have to worry about Asia with the harness racing sales. And say, these are our horses, and we'll send you another video next month. And we'll send you a video the month after that, so they can compare how they look. Because I think one thing I learned last week, Greg, is you cannot have enough information, but that onus comes on the vendors now. You can go buy a camera, go find a teenager who's got a camera, because teenagers are good at that stuff, Gregory. I would start that process really shortly, because we are looking at the same thing, almost certainly, and a sale which will be on the grounds domestically, Greg, but a huge online component. New Zealand Bloodstock and New Zealand Bloodstock Standard Bred, Greg, have done their part. They'll have the website ready, but it's up to our vendors to have their product enhancement ready. Yeah, very good advice there, Michael. Thanks so much for your input once again. Big effort getting the Dexter Dunn interview for us too. That's been your box seat for another week. We will see you in 7 days' time.